Albion's transfer window is well underway with plenty of speculations about potential transfers. Today on the Baggies Podcast YouTube channel, I'm going to be taking you through a dream transfer window, if you like, within the realms of realism. So I'm going to be taking you through some realistic transfers within sort of our club's budget and price range, and in what areas that we need to improve. So I'm going to be talking through all those moves today, who I think we should sign within realistic, because we know Messi's a free agent, but I don't think he's going to be coming to the Hawthorns anytime soon. But before we get into this video, be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel for more content like this. I'm aiming for 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and I believe that you can help me with that goal. I'm going to be releasing some matchday vlogs. I've got my season ticket, so I'm looking forward to going back into the ground and sharing some content from inside the ground for you. So if that's the sort of thing you look out for on YouTube, make sure you subscribe, because there'll be plenty of that coming in soon. Also, be sure to leave a like on the video if you've enjoyed, and comment your dream transfers below for this window. I'd love to hear who you think we should be signing. So, without further ado, let's get straight into this video. I should just say these aren't transfers that we link with in any way, shape or form. Some of them are, but some of them are just transfers that I'm basically just chucking at you. I'm just spurting some names at you. So, I think we'll start in defence. I think that's the reasonable place to go. Goalkeepers, I think we're pretty set in terms of goalkeepers. If Sam Johnson needs to leave the club, I think there's two very well-made replacements. Firstly being Palmer, who's been on loan at Lincoln City over the past season. I think he could step up into that goalkeeping position. And then Josh Griffiths, who although might be going on loan, looks to be a ready-made replacement in years to come. And then we've obviously got David Button to be back up in this season's championship. So let's start with the defence. And I think there's a couple of additions that should be made in defence. Now, one of those being a centre-back. We've got Kipre, Ajayi, Bartley and O'Shea already at the club, so that's 4 centre-backs. If Ismail is to play a 3 centre-back formation, I feel like there's another bit of depth that needs to come into there, because obviously if you get 2 injuries in your centre-back department at the same time, you can't play that formation anymore, unless you look in the academy for players, which I would like us to do, and I'm going to talk more about that in a little bit. But I do feel like there's a bit more strength in depth needed. So I'm going to go straight in and say that Kean Bryan, who plays currently for Sheffield United, I suppose he's been has rejected a new contract from Sheffield United as it stands. Therefore, at the moment, he is a free agent. I think he'd work well as an additional centre-back if we need him. It just adds that extra bit of cover. Potentially not going to start, maybe starting. I don't know, maybe Ismail might prefer that sort of centre-back. He did perfectly almost fit into that overlapping centre-back role, because he's actually reasonably short, so he could overlap. Sometimes, in fact, for Sheffield United, he played at the wing-back role. So, potentially, I can see Kean Bryan coming in on a free transfer, and I think that would be a good move. Obviously, he's rejected that new deal at Sheffield United as it stands. Therefore, I feel like he'd work really well at the club. So, that could potentially be a transfer that we're looking for strength and depth. Another thing I think we need is in defence is a right-back or a left-back to back up Connor Townsend and Darnell Furlong. I'd like to see the academy utilised for this particular element. I think, who have we got? We've got Zach Ashworth, who's playing in the academy at the moment, who I think could do a very good job. I think he's a full-back. We've got Ethan Ingram, who could potentially, I don't know, maybe in a few years to come, could potentially do a job for us, which I think is nice. And I think it's nice to have those academy players in and around the squad to potentially provide a bit of depth in that sort of respect, because obviously you don't want to come into a season with a lack of depth in your full-back positions. Of course, that's going to be difficult. So I think what we're going to do is I think we should sign a backup left-back or right-back to cover Connor Townsend or Darnell Furlong, because the championship season, 46 games, I think it's unfair to expect them to play every single one of them. So for me, I think it's got to be a bit of depth. And there's a few free agents that are knocking about that I quite like the look at. I'm not saying that these are who we're going to sign. I'm not saying that this is who we're going to be picking up at all. However, I do believe that there is potential for these moves if, I know it's going to be difficult because other teams are going to want them because they're free. But a couple that came to mind, one is Yuri Ribeiro, who played for Nottingham Forest, who I thought was a reasonable fullback. I'm not sure why they've released him. I'm not sure on what terms they've released him. But he could potentially be doing a job at a wing-back role. Same for Yasser Larouci, who's just left Liverpool. He rejected a new contract with them, and I think that's due to play time. Whether he'd be willing to drop down another division, I severely doubt. However, I do believe that he could potentially come in and do a decent job, potentially as a backup or pushing Connor Townsend for a starting spot in that left wing-back role. But I'm not sure he'd be willing to drop down a division, so that one potentially could not be happening. So onto the midfield. So I've got a few additions in defence there, so 2 or 3 additions who could be coming in and make the squad a bit more sturdy and championship quality. Midfield, everybody wants that Okay Kuşlu signing, and after a poor Euros, I'd say, with Turkey, I think Turkey obviously not good in themselves, but Okay Kuşlu didn't really shine, in my opinion, as he has for us. I think this may lead to a lot of Premier League clubs turning their noses up at him. I'm unsure whether he'd fit our system, I'll be completely honest. I'm unsure whether he'll fit the high-pressing, high-energy system under Ismail, but his quality in midfield is undoubtable, and I think that we'd be a bit silly not to at least try and get a deal for him. Even if it means they price us out of a move, that's fine. If he prices us out, if he rejects us, that's fine. It's just worth a go. It's worth a go. I think his quality is undoubtable, as I've said, and I think this has been seen in the Premier League numerous times on his loan deal. So for me, Okay Kuşlu has to at least be attempted to make him come into the club. Apparently, there's been some strong links with him potentially preferring a move back to West Brom. I'm not sure what exactly he enjoyed out of the loan spell that he had, but maybe, just maybe, he might want to return to the Hawthorns and may be willing to reject some Premier League clubs. But as I said about the Turkey Euro performance, I think that will lead to a lot of Premier League clubs turning their noses at him potentially. So, Okay Kuşlu, if we don't get him, I think there's a potential for somebody who's similar in sort of player to him. I think Gustavo Hamer has been rumoured from Coventry City. I think he may provide a cheaper alternative to Kuşlu and a younger one as well at 24 years of age, whereas Okay Kuşlu is 27. With similar attributes, I think, but I'd actually say he's slightly more energetic in the midfield, having watched him play for Coventry. This could be exactly what Ismail would want. I think, he'd want that in his high-pressing side. A lot of high-energy players in the midfield. Obviously, we've got Alex Mowat, who haven't already mentioned actually, but there's a video on him if you want to go and watch that. There'll be a little link button coming up in the top right corner at some point to talk about Alex Mowat. So if you want to go and watch that video, full in-depth analysis on that signing. But obviously somebody's going to have to pair up with him. And at the moment, the only options are Livermore and Sawyers. So potentially Hamer, potentially Kuşlu, but potentially Trevor Chalobah of Chelsea. He's seen interest from Albion. Apparently, we're admirers of him. And Thomas Tuchel has put the Chelsea man up for transfer after a successful season at Lorient in Ligue 1 in France last season. He could be available for around £4 million, is what I've been hearing. Apparently, we're in talks with him already. He's a real powerhouse in the midfield. I remember watching him for Huddersfield Town season before last when we were playing against him, and I think he looked quite good. Actually, I thought he looked very sturdy. I think he actually played like right wing back that day, but I do believe he's got the quality in midfield, and I think he's a real powerhouse, as I mentioned, in midfield. I'm not sure he quite relates to the high pressing as much as I'd have thought, but he's definitely got power and definitely got good stamina in the midfield to maintain the high pressing style of Ismail. So those are three additions that I could see coming into the Hawthorns. I think you definitely need two additions in the midfield on top of Alex Mowat to provide a bit more squad depth, because I can see one of Livermore and Sawyers just not playing or even leaving the club this summer, depending on what Ismail is expecting. So I think we need one or two more additions in the midfield. I don't think we'll get all three of them, but one or two would be nice. On to the attack now, and Albion have more or less zero natural strikers really at the club. With you've got Callum Robinson, you've got Karlan Grant and Grady Dean Garner. They're likely to occupy wide positions in the front three. Robinson and Grant have both played up front in their days at West Brom and other clubs as well. Obviously, Grant scoring goals in the Premier League for Huddersfield up front. However, occupying more of a wide forward role for Huddersfield in the past couple of seasons before he joined us. Now, I feel like there's scope for a striker in there, and I do think we need a bit of differentiation because all three of those are quick, small, low-to-the-ground strikers. I feel like we might need somebody with a bit of bulk, and I'll talk about those sorts of strikers that fit that mould, but somebody who I think is quite similar to the three we've already got but could potentially provide a bit more of a goal threat is Jonson Clarke-Harris, who scored 33 goals for Peterborough last season, helping them to promotion into the Championship. So he'll be playing Championship football this season with Peterborough, should he not choose to move away. And he really did help them to promotion, and apparently we're long admirers of him, so there could be something in that, and there could be something there. He could be available for, I think, £10 million, which I think is a risk, but if you saw what Brentford did with Ivan Toney, that was a risk. Obviously scoring bags and bags of goals year after year for Peterborough in League One, but Brentford took their gamble on him, and it's paid off. It really has paid off for Brentford, and they've now got themselves an established striker who could do it at Championship level. So potentially there might be something there with Jonson Clarke-Harris that could mean that a similar thing could happen for West Bromwich Albion. But onto that big and bulky striker, I've got some candidates for you here. I've got two in particular. The first one being Daryl Dike of Orlando City, who did a very good job with his mail last season whilst on loan at Barnsley. The 21-year-old scored 9 in 19 for Barnsley in the Championship. The only thing about him is it's quite a costly move. Should Orlando have slapped a massive price tag on him. He's 21, so he's got a lot of room to grow, a lot of room to really develop. And, £14 million is what they're quoting for Daryl Dike. So I'm a bit concerned about that. I think that's a bit too expensive. I think that's slightly out of our price range. Of course, I mentioned Sam Johnson potentially leaving the club for 20 million, but Pereira could also leave as well, which could leave us a lot of money in the bank, but I'd rather we not go and blow it on a striker that could potentially not step up. I'd rather us just solidify the squad for now to get us up into the Premier League, and then you've got that money in the bank, hopefully, if Lai hasn't nicked it all, to play to bring in those players that are going to do really well in the Premier League. So I think Daryl Dike is a bit too expensive for me. That's just an option I thought I'd give you. We've been linked with him due to the connection with his mail, so potentially could be something in that. But I wouldn't really splash out 14 million on him. I don't quite think he's worth it, but could maybe be worth it if we went up, I suppose. Taiwo Awoniyi is a strange one to pronounce, of Liverpool. 23 years old, a work permit to play for Liverpool. He signed a couple of years ago, but hasn't been able to get a work permit until now. Therefore, has been on loan since then, playing at Union Berlin over the past season, scoring 5 in 23 games, which I suppose isn't the best record. But I think he fits that sort of big powerhouse, but also with a bit of pace as well. Apparently quoted at £8 million, so I feel that there could be something in that. I feel that maybe he could be the man to lift our striking woes. Obviously, we're not going to sign all 3 of these targets. We're not going to sign all 3 of them. I'm actually concerned as whether we will sign one of them. But I feel Johnson Clark-Harris would probably be the best option of the 3 out of the ones that are quoted. I feel like he could come in and do a really good job. But the only thing is, I think we do need a differential, and I'll be looking at other alternatives, some other big strikers who could potentially give something different. Kenneth Sahora is on the bench. I mean, that's not your ideal option. I think he's the only striker at the club at the moment, naturally. So maybe there could be something with him to provide a bit of differential off the bench, even if he hasn't been very good for us at all. But however, I do feel those 3. One of those could potentially make a difference. I think Johnson Clark-Harris is my personal preferred option, even though he does slightly emulate Robinson, Grant and Dean Garner as that fast, tricky striker. But I do think we need something else off the bench in terms of a big hold-up striker. It just depends on Ismail's preference. He played with 2 big strikers in Cauley Woodrow, who I do really rate from Barnsley, and potentially he could come in, but I can't see that happening, and same with Daryl Dike. But yes, those are my transfers who I think we could potentially sign this summer. If you want to leave your comments down below, I'd love to hear them about who you think we should bring in, because I do think it's very important to get the signings right, get the signings that Ismail wants. But I do think the most important signing at all is going to be the academy, and keeping that going and keeping those players. 8 long-term deals, eight new contracts we've signed over the past few days in terms of our academy, which is really good to see. I'm very happy with that. So I'd like to see us get some of those players involved in the first team. I'm talking Rayan Tulloch, Rico Richards. I'd like to see him getting involved. I'd also like to potentially see, as I said, Zach Ashworth potentially getting involved in that full-back position, being a backup maybe. There's lots of players in there that I'd like to see getting involved, and hopefully that could be the biggest signing, bringing in players for the academy and solidifying those on long-term contracts. But that does bring me to the end of this Baggies Podcast YouTube channel video. If you're new around here, be sure to subscribe. I'd love to hear your thoughts on our transfers and see who you want to sign in terms of a permanent deal for this summer's transfer window. But if you're new around here, be sure to subscribe, leave a like, and I hope you have a fantastic week, Baggies fans. Make sure you're watching all the content on the channel. There'll be plenty more to come. I'll see you in the next video, guys. Goodbye.